Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes the power vacuum in the Middle East, America's new Twilight struggle with Russia, Republican Kevin Kiley, Democrat Jessica Morse to battle in close November House race, Singapore police probe posters at toilets claiming university funding Gaza war, Wyoming holds off late Air Force surge on senior night, the power vacuum in the Middle East, foreign affairs. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas has debunked several myths about the Middle East. Firstly, the belief that the Palestinian cause was dead and that there was no pressure on Israel to end its occupation has been proven false. The conflict reignited the Palestinian cause and highlighted the ongoing issue of occupation. Secondly, the idea that an emerging Israeli Gulf alliance would provide a counterweight against Iran has been shattered. The Gulf states have not sided with Israel against Iran and have instead focused on their own self-interest. Finally, the notion that a post-American Middle East had emerged has been proven wrong. The United States' influence in the region may be waning, but it is still involved in the conflicts and is struggling to make a significant impact. The conflict has also exposed other fallacies in the region. The quiet ties between Israel and the Gulf states were based on a mutual fear of Iran, but the Gulf states have not supported Israel in the recent conflict. The Gulf states are soft targets and are vulnerable to attacks, making them reluctant to engage in conflicts. Additionally, Russia and China, which were seen as potential powers in the region, have been largely absent from the conflict and have not played a significant role in diplomacy or security. Overall, the recent conflict has highlighted the lack of leadership in the region and the fragility of the Gulf states. The Middle East is in an interregnum, with no one in charge and no clear power dynamics. The United States, Russia, and China are all ineffective in shaping the region, leaving the Middle East in a state of uncertainty and instability. America's new Twilight struggle with Russia. Foreign affairs. The United States needs to adopt a new containment strategy toward Russia that accounts for the changing geopolitical landscape and the need for a long-term approach. This new strategy should prioritize the defense of Russia's threatened neighbors, such as Ukraine, Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova, by offering them training, weapons, and support against Russian gray zone threats. The United States should also work to sever Russia's critical linkages to the West by taking proactive measures to push down the price of Russian oil, similar to the policies implemented by Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Additionally, the United States should not rely solely on military tools for containment, but should also employ political, economic, and diplomatic measures. This includes supporting governance reform, trade, and investment to counter Russian influence outside of Europe, particularly in regions like the Sahel. It also involves maintaining leverage over China, which has more at stake in its economic relationships with the United States and the EU than it does with Russia. The United States and its allies should be wary of economic decoupling from China and instead use economic relationships to exert pressure on Russia. However, the United States must also be cautious not to repeat the mistakes of the Cold War by intervening militarily and tolerating abuses by anti-Russian partners. Instead, the United States should support democratic governance and civil society as a centerpiece of its foreign policy to counter anti-American narratives. The Middle East, in particular, requires careful attention, as Russia seeks to secure its influence in the region and benefit from doubts about U.S. commitments. The United States should reinforce its commitments to regional partners in the Middle East through expanded defense and security cooperation. Overall, a new containment strategy toward Russia requires a commitment of time and resources, as well as bipartisan buy-in and a commitment to maintaining sufficient defense spending. It will be a long-term struggle, but one that is necessary to counter Russia's disruptive global power and advance U.S. geopolitical interests. Republican Kevin Kiley, Democrat Jessica Morse to battle in close November House race. Yahoo! Republican incumbent Kevin Kiley and Democratic challenger Jessica Morse will face off in the general election for California's 3rd congressional district. Kiley had 51.1% of the votes counted with Morse at 46.9%. The district is considered a Republican stronghold, and it is important for the party to retain it in order to keep control of the House of Representatives. Singapore police probe posters at toilets claiming university funding Gaza war. South China Morning Post. Singapore police are investigating after posters were found in Nanyang Technological University's toilets claiming that the university is using school fees to fund Israel in the war in Gaza. The posters allege that the university is collaborating with French multinational company Thales, which has a relationship with Israeli Aerospace Industries and Elbit, two companies that have allegedly supplied weapons used in the Israel-Gaza war. NTU has stated that the posters were not authorized and have been removed. Wyoming holds off late Air Force surge on senior night. Yahoo! As the college basketball season is nearing its end in most conferences around the country, fans around the Mountain West still have one more week of the regular season to go before they find their way to Sin City next week to end things the proper way, via net cutting. Kicking Tuesday night's action off was senior night in Laramie, with 5 players celebrating their Cowboy careers, looking for one last win against the visiting Air Force Falcons. How Putin's crackdown on dissent became the hallmark of the Russian leader's 24 years in power. Yahoo! Russia has become a totalitarian state, ruthlessly suppressing dissent and targeting political opponents, rights groups, independent media and other civil society organizations, LGBTQ+ activists and certain religious affiliations, according to Oleg Orlov, co-chair of Memorial, the Russian human rights group that tracks political prisoners. Memorial estimates there are nearly 680 political prisoners in the country. Another group, OVD-Info, said in November that 1,141 people are behind bars on politically motivated charges, with over 400 others receiving other punishment and nearly 300 more under investigation. Political repression began slowly after Vladimir Putin came to power in 2000 and major crackdowns began after Putin regained the presidency in 2012. A flurry of laws followed that tightened regulations on protests, gave broad powers to authorities to block websites and surveil users online and slapped the restrictive label of foreign agent on groups to weed out what the Kremlin saw as harmful outside influence fueling dissent. With the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Russia enacted repressive new laws that stifled any anti-war protests and criticism of the military. The number of arrests, criminal cases and trials mushroomed. Wyoming earned 74-63 victory against Air Force. Associated Press. Wyoming defeated Air Force in a 74-63 victory, with Brendan Wenzel scoring 20 points for the Cowboys. Akul Cott and Sam Griffin each added 19 points. Jeffrey Mills led the Falcons with 17 points, while Byron Brown contributed 16 points. Wyoming took the lead in the first half and maintained it throughout the game. Navy defeats Loyola, MD, 64-48 in Patriot League tournament. Associated Press. Austin Benini had 24 points in Navy's 64-48 win over Loyola, MD, in the Patriot League tournament. Benini shot 7 of 15 from the field and 10 of 10 from the free throw line. Donovan Draper added 16 points while shooting 5 of 9 from the field and 5 for 5 from the line. Dion Perry led Loyola, MD, with 21 points. Navy took the lead early in the first half and never looked back, leading 34-27 at halftime. Navy pulled away in the second half to secure the win. ICC issues warrants over Russian strikes on Ukraine's power grid. Japan Times. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has issued arrest warrants for 2 senior Russian officers over their alleged involvement in the Ukraine war. The officers, Sergei Ivanovich Kobylash and Viktor Nikolaevich Sokolov, are accused of targeting Ukrainian power infrastructure. This move comes after the ICC issued an international arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin in March 2021 for alleged war crimes related to the deportation of Ukrainian children since the start of the war in February 2022. The alleged crimes of Kobylash and Sokolov took place between October 2022 and March 2023. U.S. destroyer shoots down missile and drones launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels. Associated Press. A U.S. destroyer destroyed drones and an anti-ship missile launched by the Houthi rebels towards it in the Red Sea, in an attack which targeted the USS Carney. The Indian Navy released images of it fighting a fire on the MSC Sky 2 container ship, which had been targeted by the Houthis in the Gulf of Aden. The Houthis have targeted ships in the Red Sea and surrounding waters since November. The rebels have continued to launch significant attacks despite the US-led airstrikes. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusted observer from the 6 Degrees world, bringing you the latest news and analysis from around the globe. Today, we discuss the power vacuum in the Middle East, America's new struggle with Russia, a closely contested House race in California, Singapore police investigating posters at a university, college basketball action, political repression in Russia, and international developments in Ukraine and Yemen. Let's start with the Middle East. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas shattered several myths about the region. It showed that the Palestinian cause is far from dead, and pressure on Israel to end its occupation is still very much present. The idea of an emerging Israeli Gulf alliance as a counterweight against Iran has also been proven false. The Gulf states prioritized their own self-interests and did not side with Israel. Lastly, the notion of a post-American Middle East has been debunked. While the United States' influence may be waning, it is still involved in the region and struggling to make a significant impact. Moving on to America's new struggle with Russia, it is clear that a new containment strategy is needed. This strategy should prioritize the defense of Russia's threatened neighbors and employ a range of tools, including political, economic, and diplomatic measures. However, the United States must be cautious not to repeat the mistakes of the Cold War and should support democratic governance and civil society as a centerpiece of its foreign policy. In California's 3rd Congressional District, Republican incumbent Kevin Kiley and Democratic challenger Jessica Morse will face off in the general election. This race is crucial for the Republicans to retain control of the House of Representatives. Singapore police are investigating posters found at a university that claim the institution is using school fees to fund the war in Gaza. The university has stated that the posters were unauthorized and have been removed. In college basketball action, Wyoming earned a victory against Air Force, while Navy defeated Loyola, MD, in the Patriot League tournament. Moving to Russia, the country has become a totalitarian state, ruthlessly suppressing dissent and targeting political opponents. Political repression has escalated since Putin regained the presidency in 2012, and with the invasion of Ukraine, new laws have been enacted to stifle protests and criticism of the military. In international developments, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for 2 senior Russian officers over their alleged involvement in the Ukraine war. The U.S. destroyer has also shot down missiles and drones launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels. In conclusion, the news today highlights the ongoing power struggles and uncertainties in the Middle East, the need for a new strategy in America's relationship with Russia, and the concerning political repression in Russia. It's a complex world out there, and it's important to stay informed and engaged. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you make of these developments? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.